Hello and welcome back to another edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth series. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director at GNAT-TV's News Project, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today on Monday, January 4th, and Happy New Year to everyone who is watching. It's also a great pleasure to have with us today two of our area state representatives who will be remotely removing to Montpelier shortly. Representative Kathleen James and Representative Seth Bongartz are here with us to talk about some of the big issues they're seeing as the session is about to get underway this coming Wednesday, January 6th. Representative James, let me start with you, if I may. What are you seeing as the biggest issue or issues that the state legislature will be confronting as things get underway later this week?
Well, COVID recovery obviously is going to be at the top of the list across every committee, I think. We are probably looking in the Education Committee, where I've been serving. The first thing that we're going to be doing, assuming I return to that committee, we'll be taking reports from the field and the Agency of Education about how schools have been responding to COVID, how things have been going this school year, what are their challenges, what are their needs. And then I would assume that we'll be taking a look at the new COVID relief funds. Last time around during the, when the legislature was taking a look at that CARES money, a lot of committees weighed in. We took testimony and then weighed in with some thoughts on how we thought the money in our areas of policy should be strategically allocated. And so I know that there's some money coming in the new COVID relief bill, the federal funds for both pre-K through 12 and also for higher ed. And I think we'll be taking a look at those funds and weighing in on where and how they should be allocated to help our schools respond best to COVID. So COVID recovery, I think, is going to be the central issue and the first step.
And Representative Bongartz, is that your sense of things too, or are there other things in play here as we begin?
Obviously, that's everything Kathleen said is clearly the number one priority. That's what the session is really going to be about in the end. But I think we also need to be looking at some of the issues that have the severity of which has been sort of exposed by the pandemic. And I think you can look at childcare, quality childcare, being much more available and affordable, housing, workforce, not just technically affordable housing, but also workforce housing, where there's really an acute issue, especially in our district. And a place where Kathleen has taken the lead previously is on the issue of broadband. And that's just, so I think those three issues in particular sort of follow behind that wider and bigger COVID relief issue. And so this year might be in part helping us set up to do something more with those issues in the following year. We'll see what happens. It's going to unfold, and we're going to have to just we're just going to have to see how things unfold. And the other thing going on here is, we'll have to see whether the federal government, in the end, with a new president, provides any money for the states. And if not, we're in for a particularly rough sled for the next couple of years here because of the deficit that's been for the state that's been caused by the pandemic. And so we'll have to, we're just going to have to see what happens with the federal government as we go along. Hopefully there'll be a second, the next round of relief, and it will include some money for the states, because if not, it's going to be tough. But that's okay.
We were given a breakdown about what money would flow to various departments, and I'm just looking for that.
Yeah, so. Go ahead and do that, and I'll because if you find it, that would be really helpful.
Yep.
So there's not direct money for the state, but there is some money that will flow through the state, and even when grants come into Vermont, they end up getting technically appropriated by the legislature. We're a unique state that way. So the legislature will have the work of helping, like Kathleen was talking about as it relates to education, helping decide how the money that comes for those specific things gets allocated. But there is no money in this bill directly for the support of state governments. And so that's going to be a challenge, but we'll have to see what happens. hopeful, let's say, I think we all are, that there will be a second and larger package with that will include some money for the states. The good thing about this bill, and this really, I think Pat Leahy deserves a huge amount of credit for this, is that there's a small state minimum. So we are, as a little state, we're actually doing well like we did the last time. So we'll get through it. But I think despite everything, and this is something Kathleen and I have talked to each other a lot about and talked about during the campaign, despite everything and despite the difficulties, we still need to be looking ahead, because we can do two things at once. We can deal with the immediate challenge, and we can be looking ahead to try to position Vermont to come out of this as strong as we possibly can. And those are those issues I was talking about a minute ago.
Kathleen, did you find what you were looking for there?
I did, yeah. And I think that this came from Senator Leahy's office. It's kind of a top line breakdown of, how the money would flow. And, there's money obviously for small businesses. It looks like this is not the money that would be coming directly to Vermont. This is how the big bill breaks down. So there is money for small businesses, small business grants and support, money for vaccine support, obviously, for transportation, $82 billion for schools. And it looks like that's broken down, $54.3 billion for pre-K through 12, and then $22.7 billion for higher ed, money for rental assistance, nutrition and ag, $10 billion for childcare, $7 billion for broadband, and some miscellaneous. So that's what's in the package.
So
we'll get our share, and we'll have to talk about, we'll benefit again from, I'm sorry if Seth said this while I was frantically looking through my folders, but we'll benefit again from that small states minimum.
I think it was towards the end of last week, several business leaders and business organizations sent a letter to all of you legislators urging you to focus pretty much on COVID recovery and economic relief. The hospitality industry in particular seems to have had a very rough go of things over the past 9 months or so. Is there anything in particular you're both thinking of and perhaps have heard in discussions with your colleagues, what specific things can be done to help areas like the hospitality industry and other industries for that matter hang in there until better economic times return?
Well, in the most recent round of grant making that our own joint fiscal committee approved, the hospitality industry was targeted with extra funding. And I think that was justified because of the incredible role they play as economic drivers, not just in our region, but across the state. So, beyond obviously the core issue of funneling, funneling help to them through through the vehicle of business grants, to help them survive, they need a cash infusion. I know that in the last biennium, we provided money for, for example, to the Department of Tourism to market Vermont as a destination within our public health and safety guidelines, and to have visitors come in a safe way, following our restrictions, which is very important. And also technical assistance for businesses to retool, to take another look at their business plan. There was money even for some businesses to reconfigure their spaces, to launch, social media and marketing campaigns. And so I think that technical assistance is going to be really important too. But, about the letter from the business community, I think it's really important that we not take a reductive approach to what recovery means. And, the COVID pandemic is dominating all of our thoughts now, as it should. But at some point, the pandemic will be over. And, all of the work and the effort and the investments that we need to make to ensure a full recovery and to really set Vermont on the path to a vibrant future go beyond, helping out our businesses with grants, as important as that is. And Seth spoke to this earlier, but unless we lay the groundwork now and are thinking now in this session about broadband, about childcare, about housing, about how to help our schools recover and thrive, about how we invest in families and communities, and unless we can take the long view, and also similarly be thinking about laying the groundwork for the report that's going to come out from the Climate Commission, because retooling our economy in a way that doesn't rely on fossil fuels but relies on the renewable energy of the future is a really huge economic opportunity for us as well. And I don't think we can afford to just put everything else on the shelf and focus only this session on the budget gaps, which are enormous challenges, and helping businesses only, because we live in communities and we need to be thinking about investing in our communities and about how we move Vermont forward in a comprehensive and strategic way, looking down the road. We can't afford to think short term.
Seth, your thoughts on that?
I think that was really well articulated, and I've never used the word reductory before, so I like that. That Kathleen threw in there. Reductory approach.
I might have made it up.
That was good. That was good.
You can use it.
but I think it is absolutely right that we need to. I mean, I get where they're coming from. They've got their own struggles. It's hard if you can't be in the State House and the halls and having conversations. I get all that. It's hard for them, but it's hard for everybody. And I think we just have to be, and I think Kathleen's the phrase she used, that we live in communities, is really just, I hadn't put my finger on that before, but I think it's exactly right. And we have to be thinking about a community-wide approach and everybody included approach to this. But, I think it's fair to say we both agree, and we both said it out of the box here, the very top priority has to be the recovery. But the legislature is capable of doing two things at once: an intense focus on recovery and doing everything we can, especially to allocate the federal money as it comes through, to prioritize, as Kathleen suggested, things like technical assistance for businesses. And by the way, if the PPP money that will come through will help the restaurants too, and lodging places hopefully to a large extent. So I think we have to be mindful of what the business community said. I get it. But I also think that it's just not the case that we're going to be able to just do very few things and go home. We have to be laying the groundwork for the future at the same time.
Let's talk a bit about at least two of those issues that you've both mentioned so far, childcare and broadband in particular. I mean, housing and education, obviously, very critical as well, and maybe we can touch on that as well. But I was just wondering, what specifically should the state be trying to promote in terms of, let's take the childcare issue first, because that seemed to emerge fairly strongly over the past year in the course of the pandemic. Not that it wasn't already an important issue, but what would you both like to see the legislature come up with in terms of support for Vermont's childcare facilities? What should we be doing?
I think when it comes to childcare, we're seeing a pretty broad-based coalescing around maybe a 3-year approach that will hopefully, with any luck, end us up in a place where families are paying no more than 10% of their income for childcare. In other words, making childcare affordable. And I think that there's a broad-based bill in the works that will be trying to step Vermont in that direction, so that families can afford childcare, so that moms and dads can work. Because affordability is a huge problem for childcare in Vermont. So I think that there's another area where we need to be paying attention is in making sure that childcare is a field that young people can enter and afford to enter, because right now a lot of childcare workers are coming out of school with debt from their degrees, and they're entering fields where their work is incredibly valued in the community, but they're underpaid. And so we need to be taking a look, I think, at how we can boost up wages in that field and supports for scholarships and professional development and maybe scholarship repayment, so that we have the workers we need to staff high quality childcare institutions in our communities. Because I know, hearing from the field, that's what they consider to be a huge problem.
You know, Kathleen and I were on a Zoom call with the providers, the childcare providers in Bennington County. I don't know how long ago that was, during the campaign, maybe 3 months ago, Kathleen, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But it was sad. It was kind of heartbreaking to listen to them talk about the work that they're doing and how important it is, but how strapped they are for money, and these people who care for our children and do such a good job. You know, they don't have retirement plans. They get paid like, you know, not much more than minimum wage when they've got, you know, the degree, and they're paying debt. And it's such a critical part of our infrastructure, and we just haven't valued it highly enough. And I think the need for us to value it, you know, it's not only, it's important on a handful of levels. One is obvious that it allows people to work, and really we're talking about women in most cases, who are the ones who end up, you know, staying home, putting their careers aside, and they can't work. And, you know, we all know examples of that right now. It's hard for employers who have such a struggle finding employees. And equally important, there are kids who come from, you know, difficult backgrounds, difficult situations, and by the time they get even to kindergarten, they're already behind. And if we can have a network of childcare that really is available for everybody, we can start with kids much younger and really help alleviate that difficulty that a lot of kids have. But even by the time they get to kindergarten, they're struggling to keep up with kids who have had more opportunity. So you put all that together, it's critical. And Andrew, when it comes to, it's going to cost money. So there's no way around that. And it's really going to be a matter of prioritization. And we'll have to see what emerges as the funding sources for that. But that's one of the things we're going to have to struggle with and figure out over the next couple of years. Because in my view, and I'm pretty sure Kathleen feels the same way about this, it's absolutely critical. Vermont, it's really at the point where it's in the same league as broadband. Without it, and without it really being widely available, we're holding ourselves back from being able to be ultimately successful. But one of the great things about this childcare issue, just like broadband is, I think it goes across party lines. The recognition of the importance goes across all, you know, socioeconomic strata, whatever, in Vermont. I think it's just become so obvious that I think we're going to do something.
Well, you've given us the perfect segue to talk a little bit about broadband, Seth. There seems to be, for lack of a better term, a bit of a tension between the need to do something in the short term to help folks who are really in underserved areas and with little to no internet service at all, and put in things like Wi-Fi hotspots and sort of short-term solutions just to simply get them online, versus the longer-term solution of high-quality fiber connections and so-called future-proof solutions. I guess I just wondered what you both thought about what the emphasis should be. Or are those two things kind of, you know, at odds with each other given the fact that there's only so much money to go around to kind of implement this stuff. Would it be better really to kind of say, well, we want to build something that 4 or 5 years from now is going to be really robust and state of the art, and we'll just have to struggle through with what we got for now? Or do we have to get those Wi-Fi hotspots in place so that people can at least do the basic things that they need to do?
I don't think it can be an either or. I don't think we can do one at the expense of the other. To the extent that we can deploy Wi-Fi hotspots and come up with short-term solutions, we need to do that. But the action right now is in our CUDs, and they're really active all over the state now. I forget the number of CUDs that have been formed just since our past town meeting. I mean, our Southern Vermont CUD was formed this past March, and there have been, half a dozen or more that have sprung up around the state since then. And they're making great progress, and it's not going to be overnight. And, in the absence of some massive infusion of federal money, I think it's where we have to put our focus. And they're doing a good job. Our Southern Vermont CUD is working hard. It looks like we might be trying to team up with either Deerfield or maybe Rutland to try to reach those last mile homes. And I think that we're going to have a bill. Seth and I stay in really close touch with Laura Sibilia, and she's on the Energy and Technology Committee. And she said that they're going to be moving a bill or taking a look at a bill that would try to support the CUDs. Because I think the key thing, with the exception of the Northeast Kingdom CUD that's hired a full-time or at least a part-time staffer, Christina Hallquist, to run their operations, most of them, or if not all of them, besides that one, are staffed by volunteers. And they need support. So I think one of the things Laura mentioned was that the bill was going to take a look at trying to scrape up some dollars to find support for the CUDs in the form of maybe technical assistance or a staffer at the Department of Public Service who could help these volunteer organizations. Because, we're taking a critical infrastructure need and leaving it to volunteer teams. And it's the solution we've got, but, it's asking a lot of volunteers.
And Seth, your takeaway on that?
Not much to add. I think we have to do the short term, the little thing with hotspots, and I think that can be done. It's being done relatively efficiently and without huge amounts of money being expended to bring it at least on a kind of a bootstrapped way to different parts of the state. We have to do that. But I think Kathleen's absolutely right. The real action is in the CUDs. I'm incredibly grateful for the work that they're doing. It's kind of amazing, these volunteers, as Kathleen said, but it can't be volunteer forever because people have lives, and you have to have some staff support for those CUDs. So we'll have to head in that direction. And Laura is, with whom we, as Kathleen said, we not only stay in good touch with, we've become very good friends with, and sort of part of our team, is really taking the lead on that, and we're just going to do everything we can to support her.
There's so many other issues and topics to discuss here. The education and housing we've mentioned. Act 250 is another one. The unfunded pension liability question is another one that I suppose at some point or another is going to need to be addressed. But in the few minutes we have left here, I guess. Well, I'm hoping that we can talk about all of those things at a future point. But I guess I just was curious to kind of get your thoughts on legislating by Zoom.
There are pluses and minuses. I mean, obviously it's easier to grab a colleague in the hallway or in the cafeteria to ask them a question about a bill or run into them on the floor. So it definitely takes some extra commitment to reach out to your colleagues to talk to them about bills and to get to know some of the new folks. And I've been investing, as has Seth, a lot of time in precisely that, in making sure that I don't lose those connections with my colleagues. And like I said, it takes extra effort, but that's what's required of us to do a good job, and it's part of our job. And so I spend a lot of time on the phone and going back and forth on emails and in small group Zooms, one-on-one with colleagues, setting up little groups to talk about different issues. And just because it isn't as easy doesn't mean it can't be done. And just takes a little bit more commitment. And in terms of the greatest plus side of legislating by Zoom, there is a level of transparency and accessibility to the public that blows away anything we had before. I understand the argument that anybody could come to the State House, but that's hard for people who work, and that's hard for people who have full-time jobs, and it's hard for people who don't have transportation. And now everything we do, every hearing, every floor session is broadcast live and available in perpetuity for anybody in the public to watch. And that's an unprecedented level of transparency. And I really hope that we keep that part of it up. So I guess those are my thoughts on, I'm serving on the Select Committee for the Future of Higher Ed. And we've been meeting entirely by Zoom, and I don't feel that it's handicapped our work on the state colleges at all.
And Seth, I know you were saying you've been on a lot of Zoom calls already.
Yeah, a lot of Zoom calls. I haven't been in committee yet. I don't know what my committee is going to be yet. I'll find out on, I think, Wednesday, or maybe it's Thursday. Either the first or second day we get our committee assignments. So I'm not sure where I'm going to be, and I haven't had the experience of working remotely in a committee, which is, of course, where the action is, for an individual member within the House, or where a lot of it is. I will tell you, I'm in mourning for not being in the State House. I love the process, and I love the relationships. I love, having lunch with different people, having coffee with different people, seeing them in the halls, sitting around a committee table, and really getting to know your colleagues intimately. And I feel really sorry for the freshmen. I guess on one level I'm a freshman again, but I have had the experience before. I feel so badly for people who are not going to have the experience of being in the well of the House on the first day, getting sworn in, because it's pretty, it's a pretty moving experience. It's pretty awesome and awe-inspiring is what I guess I really meant. And I just feel badly for people that are going to miss that. I agree with everything Kathleen said. It's the cards we're dealt with. That's life. Those are the cards we're dealt. We're going to have to play them this session and play them as well as we can. And it does have some advantages, like Kathleen said. But I will tell you that on a personal level, I really will miss being in the halls of the State House.
All right. Well,
make the best of it.
We're going to have to leave it there for now, but I'm sure we'll have opportunities as the session goes forward to talk some more about some of the other, how things are going, and some of the other issues that you both mentioned in the course of this conversation. Anyway, thank you both for making the time for this. Representative Kathleen James and Representative Seth Bongartz. So great to have you both with us today to share your thoughts. And well, we'll see you again real soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, GNAT, as always.
Thanks,
for the
Andrew.
Amazing work that you do, and the amazing work that GNAT does for the communities it serves. It's remarkable. So thank you.
Well,
Here.
Thank you. And we will definitely not edit that part out. All righty. Take care.
Okay. Bye.